Really? Morning, John. Morning, Ali. Amaf. Amaf, however you pronounce that. Welcome aboard. Welcome, Robert. Welcome, Fiona. Welcome, Dunk, John, Lenny, Stephen, Paul. Naughty Step. Good morning, Naughty Step. Get thee back up there on thy perch. Morning, folks. Lenny, Jim, Brian, Lorraine, Alison. Morning, Alison. How are you? Mark and Eddie. What we got here? John, Paul, Charlotte, Jan, Doug, Tommy. You watch you for 8 strokes, Tommy? Ian, Ryan, Kirsty, Paul, Tracy, Alison. Morning, lads. Pray, Pat. Morning, Harry. Right, numbers are climbing nicely. So we'll give a wee second and then we'll get this broadcast underway. Top of the morning to you too, Ali. I hope things are going well there in France. Okay, seems to be enough ease on board, so let's get this broadcast underway. It's Andy Truck Davey out the truck and at home in his office in Salford, North Lanarkshire, where it's clearing up, bloody chilly, -1. That's the weather forecast for Salford, North Lanarkshire. You want to know what the weather's like where you are? Look at your own bloody one day. All right, this is the news review for the 26th of the 1st, 2023 from the colony of Scotland. The Wednesday started with 2 main teams in the rags, according to the Pravda or BBC Scotland, to anyone new to the channel blog. Right, trans rapist prisoner fears and Network Rail could face criminal charges of a health and safety nature, but should be corporate manslaughter over Stonehaven derailment in 2020 where 3 people died. Okay, now on the trans rapist prisoner fears, Iowa Branson, who committed rape while identifying as a man, who now identifies as a woman, has been sent to Clontarf prison for a risk assessment. Now, because this person now identifies as a woman, UK equality laws means until risk assessment is carried out, must be treated as such, as a woman. We know now that this particular person has now been moved from that facility. Now, these are sensitive issues, and they're sensitive, and it's a minefield area for any government. But after risk assessment, according to what we're being told, there is no legal edict saying that the person self-identifying as either male or female has to serve prison sentences in the prison setup for that gender. All right. So just because you've decided that you identify as a female or you identify as a male, you'll be risk assessed in that gender. But that doesn't mean you're going to spend your sentence in that gender's specific space. And as we now know, this person has been moved to a male facility. All right. So, to be honest with you, my head hurt looking at this stuff. It really did. I'm not going to kid you on. You know, there's the gender thing, and then there's the Equalities Act, and it is bloody complicated. It's a minefield. But the Scottish Prison Service seems to have it down to part. It's not the first time that they've dealt with transgender criminals. It's probably not the first time they've dealt with a transgender sex offender. I would imagine that this person will eventually end up in the new Peterhead. Peterhead tends to be where they keep sex offenders, as I know, or it used to be. Anyway, as I say, I was looking at this for a wee while yesterday, and it was hurting my head. There's 2 or 3 different acts that are going to be taken into consideration here. And then, of course, the safety of other prisoners going to be taken into consideration here. There's all sorts of things in the pot. But anyway, this person has been risk assessed and moved. Right, on the Network Rail issue regarding the Stonehaven derailment that killed 3 people, the drainage for that section of the track had recently been done, but not to the right specifications according to the Health and Safety Executive. Okay. So they looked at it and looked at the contractor who put in the new drainage system on that section of the track, and then took a look at the plans that were given to the contractor, and the Health and Safety Executive said, well, the contractor built these to spec, which meant that Network Rail got the spec wrong. So now the Health and Safety Executive are looking at a criminal prosecution against Network Rail for health and safety failures, when actually they should be looking at a Network Rail for corporate homicide or corporate manslaughter, whatever that's called these days, you know. So there you go. Network Rail facing health and safety. There's 4 in the system, as there are some other, as I say. Anyway, as I say, the Health and Safety Executive to take Network Rail to court for health and safety failings of that crash in Stonehaven in 2020, where 3 people died. Right, moving on. Thursday, and another poll from the National says Scots lay the blame for NHS crisis, as they're calling it. We're not calling it a crisis, we're calling it pressure. At the door of Westminster and not at the door of the Scottish Parliament. And that's because the people here apparently understand that NHS funding in the devolved settlement in the devolved countries is tied up in Barnett formula. And the Barnett formula. So it's a proportionate share of what's spent on healthcare in England. And as the Tories have been running down the NHS in England for the last 12 years or 11 years, then, of course, funding for NHS Wales, NHS Scotland and NHS Northern Ireland has been cut. Here in Scotland, the decision was made to bolster that from other parts of the Scottish budget, and people understand that. So the blame for all the problems in the NHS's UK-wide, it would appear, is being laid firmly at the door of Westminster, because the devolved nations, as I say, they get the funding for their healthcare services through the Barnett formula, and if England's cutting healthcare spending, then the amount of money coming north, going to Wales and going to Northern Ireland is cut. I know the contractor that did the work on that section of Network Rail went bust Carillion. We know that, but as I say, the Health and Safety Executive looked at it and looked at the specs that were given to Carillion, and Carillion had built the drainage and the culvert that collapsed to the specifications that was given to it. Right, moving on. Thursday, and it comes to light that King Chuck, the constitutional monarch who's supposed to not interfere in politics, has used his non-existent power to exempt himself, his family and his lands from Scotland's new fox hunting for hunting with hounds law. So much for King Chuck having no power. It would appear he's got the power to write himself in and out of laws where it pleases him, and in this case it's on fox hunting and hunting with hounds on his lands. Oof. Right, moving on. Thursday, and the first of Byline Times big stories of the day hits the internet, and it's on the new minimum service bill going through the Commons. Professor Keith Ewing of the London School of Economics says the new bill gives a unprecedented power to the business secretary. At this stage, the business secretary is Grant Sharps, and it would give him unfettered power in 6 sectors: transport, education, fire and rescue, nuclear decommissioning, and border control. Now, when you talk about fire and rescue, you were talking about the fire service and the ambulance service, okay? Mr. Sharp will be able to end or amend workers' rights in these sectors. He will even be able to define what transport or education is, what it means, what it should be. Right. He'll also be able to set minimum service levels and penalise those who don't comply with work orders from employers. He could take away holiday entitlement, maternity rights, scrap minimum pay levels in a sector, or even scrap pension liabilities. All right. So Professor Keith Ewan, one of the UK's top industrial relations experts, says the bill is draconian and must not pass. He also says that this is an authoritarian government which has stripped away people's rights at an unprecedented pace. All right, so top industrial relations expert says this law doesn't work, it's draconian, it's authoritarian, and it should be scrapped. All right. He also says it breaks human rights law. Right, moving on, Thursday, back here in Scotland, the Finance Committee sit to look at the SNP Green government's proposed budget for 2023-2024. After the scrutiny of the proposed budget, the Pravda introduced three committee members, one SNP MSP, one Tory MSP, and one Labour MSP, no Green MSP, and no Lib Dem MSP. I guess they don't sit in the committee. Anyway, so two cuckoos in the nest versus one government official, right? And the SNP MP explains the proposed tax rises and the crippling effect of the energy hike and inflation on the Scottish government's budget. She tells the Pravda it's the right thing that to do, to ask those with the broadest shoulders to give a little more to help maintain public services. Right, Tory MSP says inflation is a worldwide problem, and that tax rises for the rich is not the right way to grow the economy, bypassing the fact that the economy is reserved. Scotland only has one economic lever, and that's income tax. Wow. Right, Labour says Scottish budget is enough. So basically Westminster's saying it's enough. Well, crap. and it's no fair to tax more, apparently, says Labour, as people are struggling with a cost of living crisis. And the Scottish Government apparently are crap at managing the budget and have mismanaged the budget, and they cite NHS workforce planning, whatever that, but stating that they're spending too much on agency nurses. And he also says boats, ferries. Yeah. But there's a Davy says here, I've seen the attitudes surveys towards tax rises on the richest here in Scotland. And the Scottish people overwhelmingly say, yep, SNP correct. Let those with the broadest shoulders help maintain our public services. So the proposed tax rises here in Scotland on the upper three tax bands, because it's not affecting the lower two tax bands, is acceptable to the Scottish people, actually. We are not adverse to paying tax for good public services. But there you go, the cuckoos in the nest don't like it. Big deal. The SNP and the Green have got a majority, the budget will pass. Right, moving on. Thursday lunchtime rolls around and First Minister's questions are on. First up is Dross, chief loser at the Blue Tory branch office in Scotland. He goes on the trans rapist and where they should be housed, the prisoner. The FM tells him that she agrees, and when the SPS, the Scottish Prison Service, has finished their risk assessment, the transgender rapist will not be serving his/her sentence in a women's prison facility. Dross has no chuff, legs knocked out from under him. Dross demands to know where the trans prisoner is now, and quotes a couple of prison regulations at the First Minister. The First Minister tells Dross the transgender prisoner is being assessed by the Scottish Prison Service in segregation and will not be serving their sentence in a female facility. Dross repeats himself. First Minister just parroted him and made him look stupid. And as he always does, actually, Dross looked like an absolute clown yesterday. You could even see the shock and horror on the benches behind those faces with the type of language he was using in the chamber. I'm surprised the presiding officer didn't pull him up, actually. But anyway, it was incredible to see how quiet the benches behind them were, the other Conservative members. They were not chuffed at the display in front of them. Dross, when he looked through, must have realised that his jacket's on a sugary peg. He'd went too far. Anyway, Dross looked like an idiot and a stupid wee boy, and he toddles off to the naughty step on his own volition. Okay. Next up was Sarwar, and for the umpteenth time, he is ambulance chasing. He is on NHS waiting times. His question is turned back on himself by the First Minister, so Sarwar gives the First Minister the answer to his own question. Right. Poverty Pie then reads out a line of figures and says, there were stand in 2019. The First Minister looks at him as if to say, you've just tripped yourself up, you spanner. You don't know, there's something happened between 2019 and now. Yep, a global pandemic. So, Poverty Pie's no having it, is he? He then says there's less people using the A&E now than what there was in 2019. And the First Minister says, that's right, we know. It's because of the measures we've been taking to try and alleviate the pressure on A&E. So we have got paramedics and the ambulance staff treating people at home where we can. And we've got NHS 24 redirecting patients to the right facilities. That's why there's less people using the NHS A&Es at the moment than what there was in 2019. Spanner. So, Sarwar sits down looking a wee bit confused to himself. He doesn't realise, I think he realised how bad it was going, but didn't quite understand how he'd managed to make such an arse of it. First Minister just looks at Sarwar with pity. He's not even on the same platform as her. There's Dross right enough. She looks at it to him as if to say, if I go to do this again this week, spike these two wee spanners and send them after the naughty step. Oh, mental. If that's the best the red and blue Tories have got, I don't think the SNP will get anything to worry about for decades. Nobody in their right mind are going to vote for these idiots in a Scottish election. Oofed. Anyway. No contribution for the stuffed shirt, a relevant one, Alex Cole-Hamilton. He's only allowed a question once a month or something like that. And Davy says, getting the stuffed shirt, a question a month is one too many. Right, moving on. Thursday, in Byline's Times' second explosive article of the day, he hits the internet, right? And the headline reads, minutes of Boris Johnson's meeting with Cambridge Analytica would directly undermine trust between the UK and US. Could it be that the UK had influence in the 2016 US election that brought Trump to power? I think the Americans will be itching to see those minutes. The article also tells us about the underhand tactics Cambridge Analytica use to influence election results around the world. For their clients, of course, Cambridge Analytica's clients, which of course are other states. Okay. Now, they influence social media to influence they were influencing social media to influence election outcomes. But worse than that, apparently they were using sex workers and all to influence outcomes of elections. That means corrupting potential public officials. Wow. Maybe Cambridge Analytica's directors should be in jail. Definitely CEO. Because, of course, the evidence of how they were influencing elections around the world and the confession that they used sex workers to influence these elections was all caught on tape undercover. Reporters. But the question is here, why was Bojo in an official capacity talking to Cambridge Analytica? Because remember, there's minutes to this meeting. That means it was an official capacity. Was the Tory party / Westminster government using Cambridge Analytica to influence elections around the world? And if they were, whose elections around the world were they influencing? Or were they just influencing elections here in the home nations? Were they manipulating the Scottish referendum? Have they been trying to manipulate Scottish elections? Welsh elections, Northern Irish elections? Were they doing that, were they? There's more questions than answers here. And this information about what's in these minutes is to be locked away. But as I say, there's bigger questions here. The question is, whose employee was Cambridge Analytica under? Was it the UK government? And if so, have they been tampering with elections worldwide, the UK government? Not good. We need answers. We, the public, who have obviously paid for this company to influence elections elsewhere, or even here in the home nations. We are paying for these people to manipulate our democracy. We need answers for this one, folks. This is serious. Really serious stuff. Not good. But the fact that whatever was said in that meeting would seriously undermine US-UK relations. What else have these buggers been up to? Right, moving on. Thursday, here in Scotland, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon steps in to protect teaching jobs and school hours. Local authorities across Scotland had been looking at cutting the number of teachers' posts, and we're also looking at the length of the school day in order to cut costs with inflation and energy. And cost gouging everyone's budget. Doesn't just affect us, it affects the councils, it affects the government, it affects the NHS, this power gouge, these power price gougers. Anyway, the First Minister stepped in and tell them, you won't be cutting school hours and you won't be cutting the amount of teachers' posts. Find your cuts elsewhere. So there you go. Right, moving on Thursday in Dumnat Road, HMRC Chief Jim Hara sticks the boot into Nadhim Zahawi. Mr. Mara says that HMRC don't penalise innocent mistakes. Nadhim Zahawi, who did receive a penalty from HMRC, he did receive a penalty from HMRC. But remember, Mr. Mara's just said, we don't issue penalties for innocent mistakes. So Mr. Mara is telling us Mr. Zahawi did not make an innocent mistake in his tax affairs. So he was trying to hide the money from HMRC. Mr. Zahawi has now given HMRC permission to allow Lord Laurie Magnus to look at Sawawi's tax affairs. Will they go into public hands? No. Right, moving on Thursday, and comedy gold's about to hit your TV screens, folks. Well, your screens, not mine. I don't watch it. You know. I don't think the nation of Scotland deserves this, but apparently Jacob Rees-Mogg, ex-father of the House and ex-minister for returning Little England to the Dickensian Times, is to host a new show on Gammon TV channel GB News. 18th century Gammon to talk to 21st century racists. Oh, wonderful. Racists and whites and feminists. Wonderful. I might even tune into one of them on YouTube just for a laugh. But if there was ever a reason not to pay your TV license and to throw your telly out the window, you just got it. Yeah, brilliant. Also, Thursday down that road, and another vanity project is announced. Right, this one's a doozy and all. Westminster to introduce a bill to make it legal for them to build a Holocaust Memorial Centre to ensure we all remember the Holocaust and all genocides carried out by regimes worldwide down the years. So Davy says here, why do they need to pass a bill to build a memorial centre? Well, if they pass a bill to build this memorial centre, it means they can also dictate what genocides are depicted in this memorial centre. So you can bet your boots you won't see the Irish genocide where 2 million Irish people starved to death in that memorial building. They called it a famine. It wasn't a famine. It was genocide carried out by, well, partly us as well, because we were part of the Union. And we were part of the United Kingdom at the time, I think. And, of course, they won't be allowed to show the Bangladesh famine, which wasn't a famine either. That was Churchill taking all the food out of Bangladesh, leading to 3 million people dying. So you can bet your boots the two biggest genocides carried out by the UK state will not be in that memorial building. You know what they say? The victor writes the history. That's it for the day. There was plenty more mush out there I could have talked about, but that's exactly what it is. It's background noise. It's mush. I could have talked about Hannah Bardell weighing a petition at the European Court to try and overturn Alistair Jack's Section 35 order. But at this point, it's just white noise. All right. So, let's have a wee look and see what the papers have to say this morning, shall we? My money is on the trans rapist. All right, so what Scotland's papers got this morning? Rapist, beauty lessons, row, and Sawawi reveals taxes. Students asked to strip off in front of trans rapists. Isla Bryson was awaiting trial for 2 sex attacks when classmates were told to undress for beauty lessons. Never heard so much passion all my life. What sort of beauty school tells the kids to strip naked? To make us piss up, so they do. Sturgeon's trans law in disarray after rapists climbed down. What climbed down? Scottish Prison Service assessed them, moved them within the allotted 72 hours that Dross was talking about at First Minister's questions. Looney Rag, the Daily Field. Oh, it's got a picture of a gammon sitting on a deck chair at the top of the front page. That's letting them. That's so that the readers can identify the paper. Right. Anyway, it says now attacker won't be held in prison after public fury forces First Minister backtrack. Never noticed any public fury. Anybody see anybody in the street talk about this fish? I've been to work and everything, didn't the village show, into the post office. Nobody's even speaking about it. public rage my arse. Right, transgender, the Scotsman has transgender rapist moved to male prison after outcry. What bloody outcry? Some Tories made some noise, big deal. Apparently U-turn sees ScotRail's peak fares suspended. The idea was to scrap them anyway, was it not? The other loony gammon rag, the Daily Express, has trans rapist sent to men's jail to serve sentence. Decision was to be made by the Scottish Prison Service. It would appear they've made the decision. Right, the Times has rapists will no longer be sent to women's jail. The decision hadn't been made anyway. See this false outrage, this false outrage. Wow. Somebody save me. And then we've got HMRC boss, the Huawei tax mistake was not innocent. The National has MPs take bill block fight into Europe. SNP's Bardell lays written declaration in Strasbourg. Move lets council members express views on UK's move. So we're now going to the Council of Europe, speaking to the UK about this act of stupidity from our colonial masters. And FM confirms trans rapists will not serve term jail and women's prison. That decision must be made yesterday morning. The has Zawawi hands over tax returns as Tory urge him to go. And the says Conservative Party Chair Nadim Zawawi has given permission for HMRC to reveal his tax history to Number 10's investigation. The paper quotes the HMRC Chief Executive's comments to MPs suggesting that Mr Zawawi did not make an innocent error in his tax affairs. Right, the Herald has energy arrears hit 10-year high amid soaring fuel bills. Cost of gas and electricity now biggest driver of household debt, apparently. And households have seen the highest rise in energy arrears in more than 10 years, claims a Herald exclusive. It reports that domestic electricity and gas bills have overtaken council tax as the biggest driver of debt for households, according to the regulators. What we got next? Let's have a look. What's the Star got for us today? The Star's got unsettling news from boffins at Oxford Uni. We're all doomed. Ungrateful robots to turn on humans and kill us all. Quick, switch that smart fridge off, because next time you open the door, it's going to haul you in and freeze you to death. Yesterday was if you get a spy in your Chinese devices at home. Today the devices are going to stir up and murder us all. Oh, the Star. Oh, you got to love a Star. The Star's brilliant. Nice to get cheered up on a Friday after a week of doom and gloom and corruption and effluence flowing everywhere. Absolutely brilliant. Well, folks, that's what I've got for you today. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it informative. And I hope you found the delivery entertaining. I'll need to hurry up and turn this computer down before the hard drive opens up and tries to eat me up. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You couldn't make it up. Well, apparently the day and they can. There you go. I mean, it appears the Daily Record's been doing it. We know they've all been doing it, actually. They've also been parroting false information from the Conservative Party for a while now. As we know, Dr. Sandesh Gilgany, this Tory spokesperson in health this week, is bottom smacked by the Information Office's Commissioner for misrepresenting the stats on scans in NHS Grampian. We also know that NHS Grampian said he's either too stupid to read the stats properly or he was deliberately bending the stats. So as we know, we do get untrue stories out there. And probably the transgender rapist story has been blown out of proportion as well by the hags and by the Conservative and Unionist Party. The Scottish Prison Service has procedures it has to follow under equality laws as well as everything else. And after risk assessment, it decides where a prisoner will be housed, irrespective of what gender they portray themselves as. Now there you go. Right. Support the independent media. Support Broadcasting Scotland. Support Independence Live. Support Indie Live Radio. Caledon Media. Support the Irish Scot magazine. Support the national newspaper. Support independent bloggers and bloggers. And if you've got a crowdfunder on your go, as you know, we have on super chats, so you can donate to food banks instead of going to your local supermarket and make a donation. You can make it while you're sat here. So, as I say, if there's a crowdfunder on the go, and only if you can afford it, throw some money in the pot, alright? Now, as you know, Siobhan and Judith Reid are still working on getting the Freedom Chain from Glasgow to Edinburgh up and running and on the go. If you haven't signed up to it yet, please sign up to it. We need 70,000 people to make that chain happen. Alright? And you can do that on the Freedom Chain Facebook page. You can sign up there and help them get to the total they need. I'll be on the chain. David and I will actually be reporting on it. For different areas on the chain. So, support the Freedom Chain, folks, as well. Alright? Now, remember, eyes on the prize. Partisan politics, you're focusing when you talk about independence, because people want to talk about big issues. They don't want to talk about how the Alpha Party doesn't believe that the SNP will get them there, and doesn't want to, and so on and so forth. What they want to hear about is borders, currency, trade, that sort of thing, military, defence, that sort of thing. Which brings me to the SNP MP for Angus, who has just been promoted, and NATO, believe it or not. He's just been promoted in NATO to something to do with our finance and procurement department, assistant director or something like that. Which shows the SNP are making inroads into NATO as well, so there you go, folks. And the Sunday show has been changed to Monday. I was going to get to that after some things. The Sunday show has been changed to Monday at 2 p.m, folks, okay? Because of circumstances with David's household. And, yeah, it's the weekend. I'd like a wee day after broadcasting at the weekend. Alright? Now, follow the last couple of bits of guidance. Alright? Clean hands and surfaces regularly. And if you're not feeling great, mask up. Think about your friends, your family, your neighbours, your community, and mask up. Alright? So, have a wonderful weekend. And I don't dare to talk to Davey on a Monday now because I don't have time to write the review of the weekend anymore. I work Sunday evenings, so I don't have time to sit down and do the studying required and the amount of hours is required to write a weekend review anymore. Things settle down, I'll get back to you. But you'll be two Davies on Monday at 2 p.m. and then you'll have me doing my news review shows the rest of the week. Now look after yourself, please. And Davey, could you please post a link to the How You Gonie's video? I'll see if I can find it for you and put it back up my timeline with it. It should be. I think David put it onto the two Davies. I'll speak to him about it and see if he did. But hey, it goes into all sorts when it comes to How You Gonie's, alright? Have a nice weekend, folks. Look after yourselves. Look after each other. Be kind to each other. And I'll see you quite a few years quite soon in Aberdeen for the national newspaper's Independent Roadshow, which is doing something in conjunction with Yes Aberdeen on the 25th and 26th February. So Davey will be up there. because I've been asked to say something with it. Alright, so you guys have a nice day. Have a nice weekend and look after each other. Bye for now.